Hello, YouTube, and all my friendly folks. It's been quite a while since I did anything, right? Well, y'all know I'm privy to stories, and especially humorous ones or ones that tug at your heartstrings. This one is quite humorous. This is about a deer hunter, and this is a letter from someone who wants to remain anonymous, who farms, writes well, and actually tried this. Here we go. I had this idea that I could rope a deer, put it in a stall, feed it up on corn for a couple of weeks, then kill it and eat it. The first step in this adventure was getting a deer. I figured that since they congregate at my cattle feeder and do not seem to have much fear of me when we are there, because a bold one will sometimes come right up and sniff at the bags of feed while I'm in the back of the truck not 4 feet away, that it should not be difficult to rope one, get up to it, and toss a bag over its head to calm it down, then hog tie it and transport it home. I filled the cattle feeder and then hid at the end with my rope. The cattle, having seen the roping thing before, stayed well back. They were not having any of it. After about 20 minutes, my deer showed up, 3 of them. I picked out a likely looking one, stepped out from the end of the feeder, and threw my rope. I wrapped the rope around my waist and twisted the end so I'd have a good hold, and the deer just stood there and stared at me. The deer still just stood and stared at me, but you could tell it was mildly concerned about the whole rope situation. I took a step towards it. It took a step away. I put a little tension on the rope and then received an education. The first thing that I learned is that while a deer may just stand there looking at you funny while you rope it, they are spurred to action when you start pulling on that there rope. That deer exploded. The second thing I learned is that pound for pound, a deer is a lot stronger than a cow or a colt. A cow or a colt in that weight range, I could fight down with a rope and with some dignity. A deer, no chance. That thing ran and bucked and twisted and pulled. There was no controlling it, and certainly no getting close to it. As it jerked me off my feet and started dragging me across the ground, it occurred to me that having a deer on a rope was not nearly as good an idea as I had originally imagined. The only upside is that they do not have as much stamina as many other animals. A brief 10 minutes later, it was tired and not nearly as quick to jerk me off my feet and drag me when I managed to get up. It took me a few minutes to realize this, since I was mostly blinded by the blood flowing out of the big gash in my head. At that point, I had lost my taste for corn-fed venison. I just wanted to get that devil creature off the end of that rope. I figured if I just let it go with the rope hanging around its neck, it would likely die slow and painfully somewhere. At the time, there was no love at all between me and that deer, and I would venture a guess that the feeling was mutual. Despite the gash in my head and the several large knots, where I had cleverly arrested the deer's momentum by bracing my head against various large rocks as it dragged me across the ground, I could still think clearly enough to recognize that there was a small chance, that I shared some tiny amount of responsibility for the situation we were in. I didn't want the deer to have to suffer a slow death, so I managed to get it lined back up between my truck and the feeder. A little trap I had set beforehand, kind of like a squeeze chute. I got it back in there and I started moving up so I could get my rope back. Did you know that deer bite? They bite. Like, ouch, bite. They do. I never in a million years would have thought that a deer would bite somebody, so I was very surprised when I reached up there to grab that rope and a deer grabbed a hold of my wrist. Now, when a deer bites you, it is not like being bit by a horse where they just bite you and slide off to then let go. A deer bites you and shakes its head almost like a big dog. They bite hard and it hurts. The proper thing to do when a deer bites you is probably to freeze and draw back slowly, although I'm not 100% sure because I don't know much about deer bites. I tried screaming and shaking instead. My method was ineffective. It seems like the deer was biting and shaking for several minutes, but it was likely only several seconds. I, being smarter than the deer, although you may be questioning that claim by now, tricked it. While I kept it busy, tearing the tendons out of my right arm, I reached up with my left hand and pulled that rope loose. That was when I got my final lesson in deer behavior for the day. Deer will strike at you with their front feet. They rear right up on the back feet and strike about head and shoulder level, and their hooves are surprisingly sharp. I learned a long time ago that when an animal, like a horse, strikes at you with their hooves and you can't get away easily, the best thing to do is try to make a loud noise and make an aggressive move towards the animal. This will usually cause them to back down a bit so you can escape. This was not a horse. This was a deer. So obviously such trickery would not work. In the course of a millisecond, I devised a different strategy. I screamed like a woman and tried to turn and run. The reason I had always been told not to try and run from a horse is that it paws at you, is that there's a good chance that it will hit you in the back of the head. Deer may not be so different from horses after all. Besides being twice as strong and 3 times as evil, because the second I tried to run, it hit me right in the back of the head and knocked me down. Now, when a deer paws at you and knocks you down, it does not immediately leave. I suspect it does not recognize that the danger has passed. What they do instead is paw at your back and jump up and down on you while you are laying there crying like a little girl and covering your head. I finally managed to crawl under the truck and the deer went away. So now I know why people go deer hunting. They bring a rifle with a scope to sort of even the odds. All these events are true, so help me God, an educated Billy farmer. And that's the end of that story, folks. Wow, just crazy stuff. Anyway, I'll be back with another one hopefully sometime soon. Maybe y'all could send me one. Let me know if you need my email address. Y'all have a blessed day. Enjoy the show.